of their reactions and their responses to the film, and then we'll just come down the line, and then we'll want you to interact with us.
Hi, Faisal Sardar from the Islamic Center of East Lansing.
I hope you all enjoyed the film. As far as I'm concerned, I think it was very emotionally connecting. I happened to see a bit of the preview of the film, and I almost wanted to tell the organizers to leave some Kleenex at your desks. It was pretty intense at a certain time. But I think overall, the message of the film was we all as humans, as long as we can get to know each other in so much as to feel each other the way Rush did, I think we can all be better humans, appreciate each other as much as possible. And this kind of transcends the barriers of religion, culture, and it brings us down to the bottom line, which is the fact that we're all humans and we all need to be there for each other. I did take a couple notes. One other thing that struck me was the art of the way disagreement took place in the film. So within the culture, we noticed how people could interpret things differently, whether it be the religious aspect itself, where we saw Fatah being a literalist in terms of interpreting his religion in black and white, and Rush thinking more along the lines of following the religion, but at the same time using his own mind and trying to interpret things a little differently. And then coming back to the overall message once again, I think at the end of the film we saw how within a span of a week they were so connected that they were almost cheering for each other when they had to part from each other. So I'll pass it on to the next.
Okay, my name is Salah Hassan. Thanks to the organizers, Don Pisarczyk in particular, for putting this together and including me in this. I agree with Hassan's comments in large part. I mean, the film is, you know, in some ways a bit of a contrivance, obviously. You know, you bring these American students over to Morocco and you set them up with a group of culturally equipped Moroccans. You know, they speak English, they have a certain degree of mobility, and they're, you know, even though they have some anxieties about meeting the Americans and their preconceptions about Americans, they're open and, you know, willing to engage with them and have these fairly intense conversations about cultural difference and cultural identity. And it produces, you know, an important sort of moment, I think, there's several important moments in the film. But that said, I think there's something stated towards the end of the film by the young woman, the Moroccan woman, as they approach the border of Ceuta, and, you know, she talks about the privilege of being born in a particular place. And that was one of the things that struck me. And I had already started taking notes on the idea of privilege watching the film, and sort of the privilege of US students being able to move around the world because of their passport. I'm Canadian and I have that privilege as well. And we forget, we lose sight of that. And I think especially for students participating in study abroad programs where they parachute into a place and are able to go there. In this case, it was American students in a study abroad program in Spain, and then they parachute into Morocco for a week. They get a little bit of a feel for it, and it's kind of interesting. It was like, okay, they were ready to go home. A week of Morocco was kind of enough for them. You know, it was like, okay, they can go home, right? Or go back to Spain, where things are going to be a little bit different, a little bit, maybe in some ways a little bit easier for them because of, you know, the culture shock of Morocco versus the culture shock of Spain. You know, they're studying in Spain before. So, you know, so that I thought was an important issue. But also the privilege of these particular Moroccan students, you know, as I mentioned earlier, is like they're culturally equipped to be ambassadors or in a sense, hosts for these American ambassadors, if you like. And so, you know, that I think is an important thing to keep in mind too, and the kind of perspective we're given as we see these two groups of students brought together, something of a forced situation, but one that yields important conversations. And then I think also there's another level of privilege that's at work here, which has to do with the camera. The privilege that the camera provides to all of them, both the Moroccans and to the Americans, and the kind of access, you know, as they go into different parts of the country and are able to enter into these homes, into these streets. And there's a way that they move very comfortably through the streets. We don't see, I've traveled in Morocco and I've traveled in other parts of the Middle East, and we don't see that, like the sort of alienating qualities of being in a strange place, even if it's your own country. They do talk about it a little bit. The Moroccan students talk about, being in Sidi Moumen and the kind of stereotypes of negativity associated with the shanty towns around Casablanca, but we don't really get any sense of the awkwardness. And especially for the American students, the kind of, Morocco is a densely populated place. The cities of Morocco tend to have a lot of people in them. They can be, in many cases, very male spaces. And that's changed in some ways, but still you could, on a Friday afternoon coming out of the mosque, it's mostly going to be men. You don't get any sense of that from the film. And so I think the camera in a way becomes a foil and a way for them to sort of deal with, what otherwise might be more unfamiliar. And so I think we want to keep that in mind in thinking about a film like this and how the educational experience that it's giving us, and one it definitely is about humankind and attempts to negotiate difference and that kind of thing, is always mediated in those moments of privilege that either come from where we're born, the kind of education and opportunity that we have, particularly for the Moroccan students and the American students, and then the way that the camera mediates that entire experience for us. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk today as a filmmaker and as a Moroccan. There were a couple of things I really liked about the film. The thing about documentary work is it's a lot about, it's a sort of social experiment, and I thought the film did a really good job in, testing the variables. What are the subjects going to do in this situation? What are the subjects going to do in this situation? And I think the film did a good job of putting them in different situations and testing them out. Moroccan versus Moroccan, Moroccan versus American. A wealthier, more educated Moroccan in Sidi Moumen, and an American in Sidi Moumen, and all these perspectives give us a good idea of the different relationships that can occur within societies, but also between societies. I also thought it was a really good choice to start. He could have easily started shooting in Tangier and stopped shooting in Ceuta, or before they crossed over to Ceuta, but he didn't. He chose to start shooting in I think it was Tarifa, or on the other side of the Mediterranean, and I thought that was very important, and ending it that way too is important to show that there is this divide that separates them, this physical divide. I did find the film a little bit, I don't know the word, flowery. It made things, too beautiful sometimes. And also, from a filmmaking perspective, to enhance that social experiment, I wanted to add on to what Professor Salah here said, that the camera does play a role especially in documentary filmmaking. It does have an effect on the subject, and I would have liked to see a more reflexive film that reflected on the very method of filmmaking and how that affected the subjects in the different contexts that they were in. But otherwise, I thought it was a great film in showing like I said, in social experimentation.
My name is Safwa Babana Hampton, and I'm a faculty I'm a French faculty in the Department of Romance and Classical Studies. I thank our colleague Venice for facilitating this panel to react to the documentary that we have just seen. I agree very much with much of what has been said already, so I'm not going to repeat. But to speak of what particularly struck me, or to the strengths that I see in this movie, I think I particularly appreciated how the director captured the process of maturation basically we are watching 4 American students and 4 Moroccan students growing before our eyes, or at least that's the effect it has on the viewer from the overall techniques that are used by the film and the choices made by the film director. We see, for instance, a shift from a mode of communication or cross-cultural communication that was confrontational in the beginning, and it starts moving towards a more dialogue mode. We see, you know, the participants were talking about accusations, you know, they were accusing each other, you know, taking, you know, foreign policy cases to be indicative of what the essence of the individual is, and so forth. So that to me was a powerful, I think, aspects of the film, is to watch these characters grow and, you know, these participants grow in the arc of transformation that makes them at the end able and more responsible to recognize their internal difference. When we saw the 2 Moroccans disagree about what religion means to them. So that is very significant to witness how they come to realize and become conscious and even embrace their internal differences, but also reach a moment of maturity where they're also embracing their common humanity with the other, so the 4 other Americans. I think, again, you know, much of what's said rings very true to me as well, but to go back to the visit to Sidi Moumen, the shanty town in Casablanca, which is significant. The reference is significant in the film because this is, if you were reading the comments of the director, he reminded us that this is where the authors of the terrorist bombings of Casablanca in 2003, this is where they came from. So they come from those shanty towns, and he tried to establish a connection between the terrorist acts and their socioeconomic background. And so I thought the film did a good job in humanizing the people, the residents of these shanty towns, to dispel any temptation to associate all the residents of these shanty towns with propensity to violence, senseless violent act, and portraying, you know, giving a human portrayal of one of the residents, Marco, I think was his name. So it even went beyond that by portraying the kind of interaction, as Nadir was talking about, that emerged from his encounter with Americans, and it made, to me, it made for a very complex and very interesting cross-cultural communication situation, where not only we have Moroccans, you know, interacting with Americans, but across class and even language barriers. So he does not speak English and doesn't speak French, but he was communicating through a translator from the same culture who was translating to the American. And they were basically asking each other, they were continuing the dialogue, what do you think Americans think about Islam, and so forth. So communication was happening, and we see a moment of creativity and a willingness to really, you know, activate or resort to whatever they have within their reach in order to make it possible to communicate and to reach out to the other. So that one I was particularly, it's something that marked me as well, is that moment. And of course the borders at the end, where we see the humanist. I think if there's a critique I'll make is the narrator's voice at the end, you know, giving us but still we see there's an interest in sending a humanist, pacifist message on the director's part, and which reminds us that borders are unnatural, they are constructs. Because in the words of the girl, I think her name is Amal, or she said that I didn't feel different when I was among them, but suddenly now that they reached the border in Ceuta, she feels different. So to her, it struck her as unnatural to be in that situation of being different, because she did not, you know, spontaneously in that situation of living together, she did not feel different. So that's why I thought it was a good choice and confirms what Nadia already said. So borders of all kinds seems to be the message. They divide people, they divide cultures, and there's probably an interest in rethinking, rethinking our perceptions of borders and what needs to be done in order to face the challenge of all kinds of divisions that stand in the way of creating a more peaceful and prosperous world. It seems to me the message at the end, but I can stop there.
Thank you. You know, I did ask the panelists prior to us getting together tonight if they had some particular questions that they want to ask. So I'm going to ask the panelists one of them and then throw it open to you. One of the questions that I got was, how does the film address the issues of U.S. students' assumptions about Morocco, Arab North Africa culture, or Islam? And what are some examples of the U.S. students' assumptions about Morocco? So I'm going to ask the panel if anyone wants to respond to that, and also those of you in the audience, what came up? What did you see? What were some of the assumptions, or how did the film address assumptions? Anyone on the panel like to? Oh, we have a mic. Oh, great. Okay. We have. You want to address that, or you? You don't? Okay. All right, I'll let the panel address it, and then if you want to speak up, you can project, or we have a microphone. Anyone on the panel want to address that issue?
Well, real quick, it starts out pretty early with this sort of question of like Muslim rage, which has kind of become a received idea. I think it was Bernard Lewis actually who coined that phrase originally, way back, long before 2001. And so it's quite interesting to see how that particular sort of formulation of thinking about Muslims. And what's interesting also in the exchange around that particular phrase, Muslim rage, is that the other woman, not the one who talked about privilege, but I don't know their names, but the other young Moroccan woman, she almost justifies it. She says, well, we're third world, you know, and it's like, what do we have? You know, we have, you know, with me, I just talk and write. This is how I respond to the injustices that I see, you know, going on. But some people, they don't have that, and so they have this rage. But the idea of Muslim rage is already sort of put out there by the Americans, and it's like, you know, we don't understand it. We don't understand where this rage comes from, and it really reminded me of like right after 9/11, and I was living here in the Lansing area, and sort of walking out on my front porch, and my neighbor coming across, and it was another one of these phrases that sort of is associated with Muslims, is why do they hate us? And so it was like this idea of all these preconceived antagonisms that emanate from, you know, the Muslim world and Muslims, and somehow, you know, Muslims are sitting around saying, oh, we hate them, and, you know, we're enraged. You know, obviously, you know, there's other things going on. And so that seemed to me to kind of, and there was something at the very beginning. One of the first shots, actually, of Morocco was of a man praying, and you know, again, it's like for anybody who's traveled in the Middle East or, you know, any place, North Africa, majority Muslim parts of Africa or Asia. I mean, people don't just pray all the time. I mean, but that's quite often the image. I mean, people do pray a lot, but it's part of the daily life of a lot of people, and it's not. You know, it doesn't have the kind of doesn't play the kind of iconic role as though there's some kind of, and because prostration is part of prayer, that's particularly alien, you know, to Christians, and so that gets perceived as something very strange and foreign. And so there is this idea of some kind of almost possessed quality that is, and so I think that's sort of played out in the film in some ways, but I don't think it totally gets debunked, because even when they go to Sidi Moumen, there's that moment where there's lots of conversation that we don't hear, right? This is the way film works, right? Hours are shot and only clips are used. But the one question that gets asked that actually gets translated is like, what do Americans think of Islam? And then they have to, you know, it's like a really difficult question, because they have to say, well, it's not us, it's like Americans. So there is a lot of sort of setup around like Morocco, like the defining feature of Morocco as a Muslim country, when in fact Morocco is an incredibly complicated place. There are Jewish communities in Morocco. There's, you know, non-Arab communities. There's, I mean, it's and so to flatten it out and sort of think about Morocco merely or uniquely or almost exclusively in terms of Islam, kind of there's a little bit of a risk of misrepresenting Morocco in all of its diversity because of that. And I think that part of that gets played out through the comments and the questions that the young Americans, to paraphrase or quote David Bowie, the young Americans asked that question.
Dr. Hassan answered this question beautifully, but I'd just like to add a couple more comments. It's hard to answer this question without mentioning the fact, the political climate in which we live in. Islamophobia itself is a multi-million-dollar industry in this country, and there are people who are making careers out of this, so-called anti-terrorism experts and stuff. So when somebody like David acknowledges the fact on camera saying that the media uses, the news sells, they use fear to sell. So this is sort of, it's going to be an ongoing battle for us when 35% of Americans believe that President Obama is Muslim. I think the correct answer is in so much as acknowledging the fact that no, he's a Christian, but it should also be asked, so what if he were a Muslim? So I think that's the perception, that's the word that we need to get out.
I also wanted to add to what you were saying. It's actually kind of crazy because as a filmmaker and as a person who is from Morocco and being from a Muslim background, even I as a filmmaker sat down in my documentary. It actually starts with literally the first shot is a shot of a mosque, and you hear the call to prayer. So even I'm guilty of that, and it's one of the choices I really regret, and my pro-democracy activist friends have made fun of me a lot for it. But even in our culture, when we were trying to play into trying to appeal to a larger world community, we end up falling into that Orientalist trap that even we as a people are inclined to falling into. You heard her say the Arab world. Why the Arab world? We never say, we never say the white world. I've never heard that being used. Oh, well, there you go. But I mean, so it's even as a Moroccan, I'm victim of that, and it's hard to come out of that, especially because we have such a colonialist history, and we were inclined to fall into the same traps as anyone, and it's really unfortunate, and people have to be more self-aware and recognize that, I think.
I want to bring it back to particularly MSU because I got another question that I think is very insightful. It's, in what ways does the educational vision expressed in Crossing Borders converge with MSU liberal learning goals? And just in case anyone does not know what the liberal learning goals are, I did go to the website and pull them out. They are listed as analytical thinking, cultural understanding, effective citizenship, effective communication, and integrated reasoning. So when you think about the film, again, think about what ways does the educational vision that was expressed in the film converge with MSU liberal learning goals? Who wants to take a stab at that? Well, it's a great question. Let's get some great answers.
Well, it's very complex.
Let's get the mic over here so everyone can hear.
I think that in many ways it does converge with those goals or that way of thinking of MSU. I think that just even bringing a film like these, I think that even bringing a film like these shows how it does converge. I think the process, like is it Safwa? Safwa was talking about in terms of the development of the the students and how you see them from that skepticism and that fear and lack of trust into towards the end where they are able to embrace each other and feel, you know, that emotional connection. So I think that it does merge very well. And I think it's wonderful that MSU does bring something like this.
What about the students who don't get to go to Morocco? Can we experience that type of learning right here on our campus? I mean, we talk about this being a global university, and we have people from all around the globe here. How do we make that happen on campus? How do we make this happen right here at MSU for those who are not fortunate enough to travel to Morocco and really get into the culture in the manner in which these students did? Anyone on the panel want to take a shot at that before we go out in the audience? Go ahead.
At least on the campus that I'm on at San Diego State, students who are coming from abroad tend to have they have their pretty much a separate facility for English learning, and they're pretty much separate from all the other students. They don't really mingle. They hang out with each other. They have dorms for just those students. So I don't know how it is here. I don't know if it's a similar kind of situation. But if that is the case, I mean, if we were to apply this to other college campuses, including the one I'm on, I think it would be a good idea to not have an international dorm and not have a separate facility for English learning. Put that English learning facility right in the heart of campus and really allow these students to mix with the culture here and really be able to voice themselves and voice their cultures right here on American college campuses.
Yes.
I think also that, thank you. I think
And then
also that we as students and as members of the community have to take personal responsibility for our education. So this is, you know, current students, but it's even after we're out of school. You know, I work on campus, we have a wonderful resource of people from all over the world, and we interact with them at meetings or, you know, social activities. We have to extend ourselves and try to make those personal connections. I think one of the strengths of the film is the fact that it shows what can happen in a one-on-one setting. But we have opportunities for that every day, and we don't take advantage of that, I think. So I just really feel like we have, you know, one of the students, I guess it was David, that spoke about, he analyzed how the news is used here. And I was finally glad to see that, because I was a little disappointed to not see more of that from the American students. I wanted some analysis, some, you know, broader perspective on how how we do things in the United States, and some more evidence of looking at systems of within this country. Because if we're not looking at them and understanding them here, then it's difficult to sort of do that in other parts of the world, and what our role is in other parts of the world. So I think personal responsibility is really important and not emphasized in a personal way.
The gentleman at the end wanted to make a comment.
I agree with Nadir. I would say I'm an international student, and my experience when I came here to Michigan State 3 years ago, what I felt is like, I felt that here, I'm not sure if that's true or wrong, but what I felt is like there is kind of a separation between the activities that the international students do and the local students or the American students do here at MSU. So as an international student, when I came here, I tried to see and discover all the type of activities that are here on MSU, and all what I found are the activities that are offered to international students, not to everybody. And after 3 years, like, I tried to integrate myself, but I did a personal effort. Nobody helped me doing that, or no organization, or even MSU didn't help me to do that.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I used to be a foreign student at one point in my life here. Ever since I decided to stay in this community, I don't consider myself a foreigner anymore. but it takes a lot of personal effort for someone coming from the outside to integrate yourself into this community and in the community within MSU. Now, as a resident of the area, I am surprised at the enormous activities that take place in this university. I mean, it's incredible the amount of activities in terms of films and lectures and all kinds of ways in which we could all learn about the rest of the world. Somehow it's not publicized appropriately. So it takes quite an effort to find out what is happening on campus in relationship with literature or any kind of activities. And I think that that's something the university can be doing much better, is making sure that they publish all that is there from international students, from locals, from every place, because that is a way of learning about others.
I think one of the things that Safwan, were you trying to say something?
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
to connect again the film with your question. I think the words of Rush to to answer that question, I'm reminded of Rush's words. He actually had a wistful voice towards the end. He thinks that this is not how this is not how things are supposed to be. And he said, what saddens him is that, you know, Americans will never know Rushds, Rushds in the world like him. They will only know Moroccans or terrorists. In the same way that many Moroccans will never know the Davids of the world, or something to that effect. I'm probably changing the wording, but the idea is that he seems to recognize that through this experience of coming into contact with, with these four Americans living and traveling together, he gained knowledge of himself and of the other at the individual level. And this is very significant, and I think it reminds us also that knowledge of the self and the other always develops dialectically. It is about confronting ourselves to opposing or different viewpoints and worldviews that we actually grow in knowledge and understanding of ourselves and of the others. And you know how that can translate into campus. I hope it's not, you don't mind to publicize a little bit the French Club. I'm the faculty advisor for the French Club here at MSU. And one of the amazing things that some of the members might be here, I don't know, but they were involved in also organizing and sponsoring the events that was held just previously today to invite Nadir to discuss his film, his documentary. And basically what they're trying to achieve is basically to materialize, to concretize the MSU liberal learning goals, especially cultural understanding, effective citizenship. They have, I can't take credit for this, but they're doing some phenomenal work to partner and reach out to other student organizations and come up with creative ideas as far as campus events are concerned and co-curricular programming is concerned. And much of what they have to do and what they have done in the past is really very much about, exploring event ideas that will allow for that cultural understanding to happen, cross-cultural understanding to happen, but also positive forms of civic engagement also to develop. So yeah, I think student organizations have a big potential to contribute to this kind of culture that we'd like to see, instead of operating like autonomous islands, separate, the international club here and the other, and even the others, you have by disciplines. And now we have the Italian club, working on some ideas with the French club, and and the Spanish club also. We share the same department, so now there's this nice symbiotic, dynamic kind of activity going on, and I think it's very enriching to everybody involved. And it wasn't necessarily historically present. It was not something that was practiced within the department, even in its former structure.
Yeah, what I'd like to, as I watch the clock on the wall, and I want to give the panelists each just a moment to give some wrap-up thoughts, but I often hear people talk about the university needs to do this and the university needs to do that. And when I do my diversity workshops, primarily with staff, I always ask the question, who is the university? Where is the university? Is that one building somewhere, one person somewhere? Are we not all the university? So we look at some of these grandiose things to be done when sometimes it's really something small that each of us can do. I always encourage people to step out of your comfort zone or get comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, it's not terminal being uncomfortable. If you step out into a different world, as you've mentioned, there's so many things going on here at the university where you can experience different cultures if you just take the risk to step out. And I think a lot of times some of us are really hesitant. Fear holds us back. We're afraid we're going to offend someone or say something inappropriate or end up with our foot in our mouth, so we don't step out there a little bit further. Step out a little bit, and if you have a success, you'll step out a little bit further. And that's really what Crossing Borders is all about. I want to give each panelist just 1 minute. You got 1 minute to give an aha or wrap up or something that you'd like to leave the audience with. And since we started at that end, we're going to start with Safwa. This time we're going to go the other way. So 1 minute. I'm watching the clock.
Well, to students in attendance, I would like to encourage you to consider studying abroad in Morocco. I hope the film I hope it brought some kind of understanding that enriched what you already know about you know, survival in a different culture or encounter with a different culture. I hope it's enriched your understanding in new ways. I guess that's my message.
That's
just positive, yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to re-emphasize that how great this film was when it came to breaking the idea that North Africa, the MENA region, is one giant monolithic block of people, and that you know, within this giant block of people there are human faces with different opinions, just like the other side of the American students who are also divided amongst themselves, and people have different opinions. So I'm glad that this film was screened here today, and thank you for coming to watch it.
Yeah, I think that what makes this film important, and there's another film that's in process now that's doing something different with China, and I'm sure that film will be important for different reasons. But what makes this particular film important is because Islam, Arabs, Muslims are so, you know, such a focus of the media today. And so to get a different perspective on that, and a perspective that's trying to challenge the way that the media has represented Muslims. And things obviously are changing in the United States, and it would be wrong to think otherwise. There are other issues that people are concerned about right now. But we remain, those of us concerned with the region, North Africa and the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, where there are large Muslim populations, we remain quite troubled by what we see in the media, and there's lots of work to be done. And this film, I think, is trying to do a lot of that work. It was kind of nice to see Edward Said cited at the end there too, just sort of thinking about him.
Well, I think one of the takeaways, which I think I'd encourage you to have, is the world is expecting a lot out of Americans. They hold us in high esteem. You saw Rush convey that very clearly. He thinks we are all superheroes, so we have to live up to that expectation. And I'd urge all of you to, I mean, if you just see Rush's personality in the film, it was awesome. The way he puts his arm around and tries to make friends with everyone, tries to make people smile even in a difficult situation. I'd encourage all of you to be that Rush person. Thank you.
And I'd just like to thank Dawn and her team for bringing Crossing Borders here, and a round of applause for our panelists for being here. Thank you.